I'm not joking. I used to think, okay, when I get a little older, I'll get a nose job. And then if I just tape this ear, if I just tape that back and sleep on it, then maybe it will straighten out. And then when I get to be an adult, then I'll have a normal nose and my ears will be straight. And I'll be really good looking then. Yeah, that didn't work out. I've accepted, the Parks nose. This is not the Choi nose, right? You understand. You don't know a Choi that has a nose like this, do you? There's no Choi. Korean, Chinese, they don't have noses like this. But Parks, which is my mom's father's lineage, they have noses like this. And if you have ever met my mom, or if you ever meet my mom, she's a beautiful, young-looking mom who has a nose like this. And so do her brother, sister, and on down the line. Listen to this New Living Translation. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago. And now I want you to listen to this in the Amplified Version. This makes me miss and think of Mercy. She would have the Amplified Version. Listen to this. For we are God's own handiwork, His workmanship, recreated in Christ Jesus, born anew, that we may do the good works which God predestined, planned beforehand, for us, taking paths which He prepared ahead of time, that we should walk in them, living the good life which He prearranged and made ready for us to live. Now, I don't know how many of you would admit to this, but if you are a fan of hip-hop, there's a new CD that I would encourage all of you to go buy a guy named Trip Lee. And some of you went to a concert over at the big Korean church here in Germantown, and we saw Trip Lee in concert over there with AMP, the Korean hip-hop group. And he just released his new CD called The Good Life. And in that CD, there's such an awesome message about how the world talks about the good life and chases the quote-unquote good life, but it's all empty. But there's a good life that God created you to enjoy, believe it or not. And this translation really captures that. There's one more. This is the Message. And let me read this to you. Ephesians 2:10. He creates each of us by Christ Jesus to join Him in the work He does, the good work He has gotten ready for us to do, work we had better be doing. That's not to say, you better be doing, you better do this or else. But on the other hand, it kind of is, isn't it? God gives us this purpose. He gives us this life to live, and it's like a test. If we believe that this is the life that God created us to experience, and we follow it, and we honor and we obey that, then we're going to have incredible blessings in this life and in the life to come. If not, we're going to get to the end of our life and realize, I failed the test. And we are going to pay the consequences for it. So it is work that we had better be doing, but many times in churches, church leaders, pastors, myself included, we kind of leave it there. And then it's like, even if you want to know how to do that, well, how do I do that? And hopefully some of you are asking that question, and this morning we're going to help you. And in your bulletin, there's an outline for you to follow. I'm working on getting better at this and doing this in a way that it's helpful for you. So this is something not only you can follow along and fill in a few blanks there, but hopefully this will help you this week to have something you can learn how to steward your life wisely. So how do we do that? How do we begin to steward our uniqueness? Well, it starts with a treasure hunt. Have you ever been on a treasure hunt? You ever had one of those maps and you've had to take ships and planes and boats to search for that buried treasure on that hidden private island? Well, me neither. But I've seen some movies and it looks pretty cool. In a similar way, we are to uncover and embrace our spiritual gifts. Uncovering and embracing our spiritual gifts. Imagine that it's your birthday. Somebody had a birthday recently. Who's had a birthday within the last week? Yeah, Elizabeth. And somebody's birthday's coming up. Whose birthday's coming up in the next month? Anybody? My mom's birthday is May 18th, coming up. You know what we're going to do on my mom's birthday? We're going to take the boys to go see the Avengers for my mom's birthday. What a great mom. Happy birthday, Mom, if you're watching this whenever you watch it. Imagine it's your birthday and a good friend gives you a gift. What are you going to ask? Usually, can I open it? You know? You're going to ask, can I open it? But why is it that so many Christians haven't opened their own spiritual gifts? They don't know. They have no idea what their own spiritual gifts are. Now, many Christians just are not aware of what spiritual gifts are or what their own spiritual gifts are. But how can we live our God-given purpose without knowing what God has given to us to fulfill it? How can we fulfill our God-given purpose if we don't know what God has given to us to fulfill it? Well, what are spiritual gifts for? What is the purpose of spiritual gifts? They're not for ourselves. God doesn't give us spiritual gifts so that we enjoy them. Now, we do enjoy them, but they're not just for our enjoyment. They are given to express God's love and strengthen His church. If the two main goals in life are to love God, the gifts that He's given is to help us, help others to love God, and build up and strengthen the church. Each of you has at least one, most likely several gifts that God has given to you to help this church, or the church at large, or people in general, to love God and love other people. That is the express purpose of those gifts. Now, like being in the right position on a football team or a soccer team or a volleyball team. Now, what's the name? Maybe one of the Shea family members will know. The name of the volleyball player that's usually really short. June, do you remember the name of that? I know you have volleyball family. Do you remember? But the name of the volleyball position.
Libero.
The libero, yes. Now, we went and saw some of Alice's volleyball, and so we're getting to understand, volleyball. And there's this short girl. It's like, well, what's up with that? She is not positioned at the front of the net because she can't even reach it probably. But her position is the libero. Sounds like a more, awesome position. The libero, she's kind of the center, the setter, or whatever, Well, if you're on a football team, if you're the scrawny guy on the team, they don't want you to be the center, hiking the ball and blocking those big dudes up front. You don't want to be in the wrong position. And there's nothing worse than putting a wrong position, or putting a player in the wrong position. And in the church, it's the same. When we try to serve in roles that are not meant for us, and some of you have experienced this before, you have served in a role that was not meant for you, what ends up happening? How do you feel? You get frustrated, right? Now, one of my favorite leaders and pastors is Andy Stanley, and he said this a couple years ago, and it's really stuck with me. Typically, people do not burn out on things that they were created to do. There are some things that you love to do, you were created to do, you are good at, and you can't get enough of it. Maybe there's something in your job, or for students, it's that one class, that topic, that issue, that problem that you like solving. The thing that you enjoy doing, and you just cannot get enough of it. And you could not get burned out doing it. But you get burned out, let's say in your job, when you're asked to do tasks that you are not wired for. And if you have to do a lot of that, you get frustrated, and it's probably likely that the people around you get frustrated too. Students, it's like being in these classes that you're just not good at, and there's other students around you that are really good at that, and they're getting it, but you're not getting it, and you're slowing it down, and you just... just frustrating. For me, that was a lot of school. It seemed like most of them. I don't know. So how has God gifted you? How has God gifted you? There are a few places in the Bible that mention spiritual gifts. And what I want you to do in your notes, we're going to just kind of fly through this quickly. I want you to mark down any gift that sounds like something that you might think God has given you to use to serve Him. First one is there's three passages. First one is Romans 12, verses 6 to 8. Romans 12, 6 to 8. It says this: we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. And so maybe one of those areas, maybe it's something where you had an opportunity to do a task or to be a part of a team or to do something, and you just felt, you didn't recognize at the time that it was a spiritual gift of yours, but it just filled you up. You just got excited about it. Maybe that's an area that God has given you a gift in. The second passage is 1 Corinthians 12, 8 to 11. Very similar, some overlap. In some ways, there's new information here. I'm going to read off here. To one, there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom. To another, a message of knowledge by means of the same Spirit. To another, faith by the same Spirit. To other, gifts of healing by that one Spirit. To another, miraculous powers. To another, prophecy. To another, distinguishing between spirits. To another, speaking in different kinds of tongues. And to still another, the interpretation of tongues. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit. And notice this last part, very important. And He distributes them to each one just as... read this out loud to me, that last part. Just as He determined. So does that mean you should go seeking any particular gift? No. No. He gives each of us the gifts that He determines for His purposes, not for ours. And we can get really frustrated. Actually, we'll get into some of this in just a minute. Does any of those things connect with what you think maybe God has gifted you for? The final passage I have on there, Ephesians 4:11, we're going to skip over that. That's where Paul says he's given prophets, apostles, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. And so that's one passage there. And then this final one, 1 Peter 4:10 and 11, ties it all up for us. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others. See, the purpose in gifts is not for ourselves, but for serving others. As faithful stewards, right? That's the choice here. The choice is to steward our uniqueness. Stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as the one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To Him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. So these are the three core passages of the New Testament that list out the different spiritual gifts. And you have been given at least one or a mix of these gifts for God's purposes. So, are you sure about what gifts you have? Or maybe you're unsure about the gifts you have. That's okay. I want you to consider trying on different opportunities that will help you to discover and mine the gifts that you have. It's this treasure hunt. God's put some treasure in you. And it may not be obvious to you right now. But as you dig for it, as you mine for it, it will become more significant, more clear. So consider trying on different roles by volunteering for opportunities to use whatever gifts God has given to you, like music. We're going to be doing some new things through the summer. In a couple weeks, Jen Simmons is going to come, and she's going to work with our young people and help them develop their musical talents. Some of our young people obviously have amazing musical talents. What she'll do, she has lots of experience working with a larger church praise ministry. She's going to help us to unleash the musical giftings that we have, so that in September we're going to have a new face to our music and worship. And it's going to be very exciting. And some of you have musical gifts, but you're not using them for some reason or another. Some of you don't have music gifts. Stop trying. If you can play the triangle, we'll find a role for you someplace, but that's probably not going to be the weekly instrument, okay? And one way to know if you're gifted or not, try it out. And if other people get frustrated, probably not for you. If you get frustrated, if it doesn't go well, if people aren't blessed by it, that's okay. Just move on. Maybe it's hospitality. Maybe some of you don't want to be up front, man. That freaks you out. But you love hosting things. Some of you love hosting things in your home. And if you do, then that's probably a gift that God wants to use not only in your home, but also in the church. If you like to greet people in your home, then you would probably be good at greeting people here in the church. Now, we get so desperate. And, just this morning, I'm like, hey, anybody volunteer to give out bulletins? I don't want to do that. There are some of you that are really a blessing. And there's some of you that if you hand out bulletins, people will not come back. Because they'll think, man, those people are really unloving. And you don't mean to be unloving. You're just not gifted in hospitality. Some of you are gifted in hospitality, and when people experience your greeting, they will think things that aren't really true about our church. Like, wow, man, this is the most friendly environment I've ever been in. I love to just walk in here at MC3 Germantown because people are so friendly. We need those of you who are gifted in that way to participate with us. We need people to teach. Starting in September, we need a new high school Sunday school teacher. And so if you think, man, maybe I'm not sure I'm not qualified, that might be you. Give it a shot, Give it a shot. You may never know until you try. If it bombs out after a couple weeks, we will move you on, don't worry. I will hear about it, I'm sure, Maybe it's working with children. The children ministry needs an army of people. And maybe you haven't done that and you find that will bring you great joy. If you try and it doesn't fit, just let the leaders of that ministry know. And we'll find a better fit. We'll try to figure it out with you. If there's no opportunity, in your communication card, there's a list on the back. I'd like information on. And on the bottom it says other. And maybe there's something you have a burden. Maybe your burden is teenage pregnancy or drug use in high schools or whatever. I don't know, man. We're not doing anything for that right now. And so because that's your burden, we're not doing anything, you're not doing anything. Well, let us know. I think this is something I'd like to be a part of. And maybe we'll start it with your leadership. I had somebody come up to me a couple of weeks, hey Ed, I think this would be a neat idea. And I think it's a neat idea too. And I said, well, why don't you pray that God will either raise you to do it or someone else? Because we're not going to start things unless we have people to lead them. And so maybe that's you. Maybe there's an opportunity just waiting, ready. And it's God's gifting in your life. Have you ever been to a birthday party where somebody's getting gifts and man, your buddy gets the gift that you've always wanted and you've just been tempted, if I could just snag it, they might not even miss it. Well, we need to be aware that our real enemy, Satan, is jealous of what God gives. And Satan will continually try to keep us from using our gifts effectively. Right now, there's some of you who are not using the gifts that God has given you because Satan has distracted you or in one way or another, stolen that gift away so that you're not using it. And there are several tactics that he uses. He is the gift thief. And so let's look at a couple of his tactics briefly. Tactic number one, he makes someone else's gift seem better. You're at that birthday party and you're like, man, I always get these crummy gifts, But my friend over here, his parents got all the money, man, he gets these awesome gifts. I wish I had his gifts. And then what is it? That's trying to keep up with the Jane. It's like, in my neighborhood yesterday, I was walking out and man, actually this Asian couple, the female driver pulls out in, I don't know how much it would have cost, but a really, really sweet BMW sports car. I'd never seen one like this before. It was nice. And it's one of those cars, women, you probably aren't going to relate to this, but you could feel the sound. And to guys, some guys, that gives us we just want to grunt, when we hear that kind of. Women are like, that's weird, But the sound of the car, it was just first gear coming out. I was 20 feet away, and I was just like, oh, just to sit behind, and then she kind of gave it a little bit of gas, and it just was awesome. And then I think, man, I look at my car. My car is nothing like that, I got the pleather interior and. Now, I'm not complaining, but this is what Satan will do. He will make someone else's gift seem better. The temptation to compare. Well, man, I wish I could sing like this person. I struggled with that for a while. Just this morning, a couple of young people at the piano, and I think, man, I said, I'm kind of envious of that. I wish I could just sit down at a piano and write a song to my wife. And then sit at the piano and say, honey, for Mother's Day, I wrote you this song. When I hear people tell stories like that, doggone it, I want to be able to do that. All I know how to do is bang on drums. And that would be a little awkward. Hey, honey, I wrote you this song. Boom, boom, boom. That's not, And so I have that temptation. There are other pastors. There are other preachers, and I look and I'm like, sometimes I'm not so much like this anymore, but every once in a while, man, I wish I could be like that. I wish I could have that person's gift, but I'm gifted the way I'm gifted. There are other people that it just looks better. You just think, man, if I could drive that BMW, man, I would be happier, be more fulfilled. But then what's going to happen? Dang it, I'm going to have to pay to get that thing fixed, and there's all kinds of problems. And then if that thing gets scratched, I'm going to freak. I got scratches all over my car, I was like, whatever, I mean, we have a nice Honda van, got a dent in it, and I'm like, struggling to get it fixed, and Laura's like, it's old enough, you get a brand new van, and then you're going to freak out if that happens, That's a few years old, no big deal. Tactic number 2. Satan will fool us into thinking others should be like us. So this is the other way around. So let's say you are really gifted musically. Then you just think everybody should be gifted like you. Or you have the gift of giving and you write big checks. And you love to write big checks, but you just get bitter when you see other people that write little checks. I hope you never see my check. We give as generously as we possibly can. Maybe it's hospitality, and you just think, man, you just get frustrated when you see people that aren't hospitable like you are. You're compassionate towards people who are hurting, and you just think everybody should be compassionate like you are. And sometimes I have really struggled with this one, because I just think everybody should see things the way I see them, because I see them the right way. No, I see them the Ed way. You see them your way. And we need to see things from both perspectives. It's like the guy who's the street evangelist. Now, do you think that if he had a choice between doing evangelism and discipling, which is he going to pick? 10 out of 10 times. He's going to go out on the street and preach the gospel, and all he's going to be focused on most of the time is helping people come to know Jesus. And Lord, I have some very good friends. That's what they do full time. Some of you have met Dell and Mary Ann Benner, and they're wonderful friends of ours. I mean, that's what they do. That's their full-time job. They go to churches and schools, and they take people out on the street and show the gospel. And then you got the people who are more teacher-oriented. That's me. More teacher, discipling-oriented. And what do you think they're going to be? They're not going to be diving out to go out on the streets as much. And so who's right? Both, right? We need to be at the table. This evangelism person needs to be pulling me to evangelism. I need to be pulling them to teaching. We need someone at the table who's got empathy and compassion for the broken. We need someone over here who speaks for justice. Those justice people can really fire up the compassion people. The justice people, man, want to take everybody to the Supreme Court, and put them in prison, and in part, rightfully so. And the compassion people want to just go everywhere and give God's love out freely. And we need that too. We need all of that. So don't be fooled into thinking that others should be just like you. Tactic number 3, tricking us into refusing God's gift. If you aren't serving with purpose, find a place to serve. Discover needs. It might be the elderly. There might be some elderly people right here in our church. Your gift discovery might come in learning what some of the needs are in our church. Maybe it might come by learning some of the needs in the community. This is one of the things Jen's going to help us with this summer. She's going to help us with the music, and she's going to help us with our serving in the community. Her degree, she's a junior in college, be a senior next year. Her degree is in social work. And she is bothered. Her passion, what drives her, are the down and out, the outcast fringe people of society that most of us don't see. And so one of the things I've been talking to her about is, hey, can you help us uncover some of those issues here in Germantown? Do you know those issues exist right here in Germany? Right here in this neighborhood. And maybe some of that will uncover some opportunities for some of you that you don't even realize yet, but as some of this gets uncovered, and you start getting involved with things and actually being the church, man, your engine will start cranking. Like that BMW, you know, man, you'll be cranking, be going. Maybe it's learning about some of the needs of families or children in our church or in our community. And tactic number 4, Satan misleads us about our gifts. He tempts us to pursue gifts we don't have. You know, everybody ought to be a part of the praise team. No, sir. Absolutely. All that matters is just your heart. Your voice counts too. Do you realize in the Old Testament, the only people who could lead worship in the temple were the best of the best? They were professional, full-time. I mean, the worship in the temple would have been incredible. Read through some of the stories of David's experience with the temple. And I mean, if God didn't give you those gifts, you weren't going to be a part of it. And I know this is controversial to some people, but this is at least my conviction. You shouldn't be involved in leading other people in worship if you haven't been given gifts that will actually bless people. You understand? If you don't bless people with your music and your worship, it's not helpful. It doesn't matter. You can have the heart of Mother Teresa. I mean, I am not the world's best preacher. I don't know that I'm working on it. I just took a class with Haddon Robinson. I'm trying to get better. I want to keep getting better. Because I want to steward the way God has made me. But if it was awful and terrible, but you just knew, Ed has a good heart. I mean, he means well. He wants it to come across the right way. You know, he just said, you know, you don't leave. Hopefully, you know. And there's some pastors that got into the role of pastoring because they were misled. They thought that they had something to prove. Do you know there are pastors who are pastors only because they were hurt by their father and they have something out to prove, and they become a pastor so that they can kind of put that in their face of their fathers. And there may be some of you who you're tempted in that position, or you're already in that kind of thing. Maybe you're already in a career that was chosen because you had something to prove. It wasn't because you were wired that way. And I hope, by the grace of God, your career path and the rest of your life will be slowly, turn by turn, more oriented toward the way that God has wired you. Don't be misled. If what you're doing is just not fruitful, and it's not being blessed by God, consider that it might not be your area of giftedness. And that's okay. We want to create an environment here that you could sing, be part of the praise team, give bulletins, work with children, work with our youth group, do different things, serve. And if it's not for you, then we'll graciously have you do something else. And if you're frustrated by it, we'll help you. Now, the way to outsmart the gift thief is to focus on God, not the gifts. Let Him show you what He has given you by being willing to serve. And as we close this message in just a few minutes, it's going to happen. This whole thing is going to happen as you just say, God, I'm willing. You know, and then you're going to have to step out into some faith. I mean, you're going to have to, if you're not currently doing anything, it's going to take a little bit of a step to say, oh, okay, I'm willing to help. I'm not sure where my gifts are, whatever. Okay. Then that's also risky, isn't it? It's risky. I mean, I remember the first time I spoke for a preaching class in Bible college, man, I was scared to death. I mean, I believed that it was something I could do, but I was scared to death. What if? And thankfully, after that time, I remember my professor, he said to me, he said, Ed, if you do anything else with your life, you're going to be out of God's will. And that was such an encouragement to me. Not that it was so great. I mean, not that it was anything to go right home about, but he saw that this was something that God had wired me for. So focus on God, though, not just on the gifts. Now, there are a few more things that will help you to steward your uniqueness wisely. One is to find your inner passion. That's going to help you unlock how you're wired. What are you passionate about? You know, God wires us for certain things. Passions that drive us, that make our lives count. It might be writing music for some of you. I mean, some of you, might write music. You might be an artist. I know Teresa's gifted in art. And somehow it might be that art. It might be sports. You know, Leon plays football. Some of you are into athletics and sports. Some of you might have a career with sports. I've dreamed about coaching. I would love to coach. I can't figure out how that would become a full-time job for me because I feel like I'm supposed to be, you know, kind of doing this type of thing, but I'd love to coach. Laura's got a cousin who just took a head footballing coach at the high school that he played at. He was a star in his high school. Then he went on to play at Lehigh University, and he was a star wideout there. He was also a basketball player, scored over 1,000 points in college, and he just got his dream job. He's been working at it, and he's going to make an impact in more than sports. Maybe some of you will be that. And parents, I hope that you don't lock your kids into your vision for their lives and your dream for their lives, but you'll unleash your kids to fulfill the wiring that God has given to your kids and the passion. So it might be music or sports or feeding the poor, or teaching children, or solving global crises. And maybe you're not quite sure. There are a few common factors in people that help them steward their uniqueness wisely. So what is it that grabs your heart? What grabs your attention? What problems can you not just flip over? What person or group of people would you like to help? How can you help them? What needs do you intend to help? You know, if you could solve any problem in the world, what problem would you solve if you had all the resources to solve it? Well, maybe you can't do that, but you can begin to somehow get involved and find your passion and your gifting in that. What cause can you take on? Similar to discovering gifts, uncovering our passion is going to take some treasure hunting. It's going to take some experimenting. It's going to take, you know, some of you young people, you need to get involved in a club at your school. You need to get involved in some kind of volunteer opportunity. Do you know the least, or the most, do you know the demographic in the U.S. that is the most unemployed? Two groups. The most unemployed group. Do you know what that is? Do you know? It is not circus work. Teenagers. Teenagers are the least employed group. You know why? Jobs that teenagers used to get hired for are now given to what group, do you think? Huh? Retired. That's right. That's right. Jobs that teenagers used to get, like jobs I got as a teenager, you know, are being given to seniors. And a lot of it are, some of it are seniors that need to work. A lot of it is just seniors who work because they live their whole life to waste it. And then they retire. Maybe you know some people like this. They retire and don't know what to do. And a lot of times people retire, they get depressed and die. Seriously. You know, I'm burdened for a family member right now who's, you know, on the brink of retirement and move. And it's like the whole thing, in my opinion, the way I'm seeing it, it's just a waste. You just worked your whole life to go buy a house somewhere, to live on a golf course, and that is the purpose of your life? What a waste. And so a lot of jobs that should be going to teenagers are being taken by seniors who don't even need to work. Now, those who do need to work, obviously we need to give them those jobs. Do you know the second most unemployed group in America? Any guess? What do you think? What do you guess? Immigrants. No. No. Goodness, that's probably one of the most employed groups. Huh? No, it's not a job type. It's a group of people. College grads. Basically, college grads up to young 30s. So teenagers and young adults are the most unemployed group of people in the United States right now. Wow. So do you know what's happening? There's tons of volunteer opportunities. So teenagers, I know most of you aren't even trying to get a job anyway, but fill in those gaps by volunteering and uncovering, discovering some of your gifts and your talents. Now it is time to discover the true you. To discover the true you. Now, anybody like to put together jigsaw puzzles? A couple of you do, right? I hate it. It frustrates me to no end. But see, some of you are wired that way. Some of us are not. So what do? You take the box, cut that puppy open, dump all the pieces out, stare at the box, study the box, and begin sorting through all the pieces, right? Well, discovering the true you and learning to steward your uniqueness wisely is like putting together that puzzle. There's all kinds of pieces that make up your life. Some of it's spiritual gifts, passions, your past, the things that you've gone through, the things that you're good at. All of those things are puzzle pieces. And like a good puzzle person, let's start with the outside edge, right? You got to put together the outside edge. And so let's put together the outside edge as we close this message. What are your strongest talents? What are your strongest talents? I mean, what do you do really well? That's probably one piece of the indicator, one part of the puzzle that, you ought to be doing that. Your job, your spiritual gift, your ministry ought to be tied to those things. If you're terrible at music, you should not be writing music. You shouldn't have a career in music. You shouldn't be helping other people with music. You shouldn't be playing music in church on Sundays. And you shouldn't even be singing in the choir. Just sing in the congregation and worship. I don't want to be led by somebody who doesn't know anything about music. Do you? There's enough people that are gifted. There are enough people sitting in this room. Enough of you have been gifted by God with music. And some of you, you got to develop it a little bit, right? We want to help you and resource you. But we already have all the resources we need. Goodness, if I had to try to lead you, you wouldn't come back. But I want to sit here and worship. And next week, let's make it louder, Dave, so that I don't have to hear myself. Because sometimes that's scary. And if you have to hear me, then that's trouble. Some of you know what I'm saying, right? You don't sing real loud because someone might hear you. What are you good at? Spiritual gifts. What has God given you to serve Him and help build up others? What are you passionate about? How has God wired you? And how do you relate to others through your story? See, part of my story has to do with drugs and alcohol and rock and roll and music and all this kind of stuff. So I can relate to people. And I believe that's going to be a part of how God is helping me to reach certain people. Lord, I'm just driving in, here this morning. I'm thinking, goodness, man, I want to be able to relate to this congregation. So many pieces of my wiring don't relate to your wiring. And so I want to figure that out a little bit better. A 5,000-piece puzzle can be overwhelming, right? Dave likes puzzles, but a 5,000-piece puzzle, whew, that's huge. And figuring all this out, figuring out yourself and where God wants to use you and stewarding your life can be overwhelming. It can feel overwhelming. As you begin to sort out the pieces to your puzzle, remember the most important thing. To keep the main thing. The main thing. It's not about, you just got to find out what your spiritual gift is, or you just got to find out how you, the main thing is the main thing. And the main thing is to be faithful to your God. In 1 Corinthians 4:2, Paul said, now it is required that those who have been given a trust, okay, all of us have been given a trust. You've been given your life. You've been given gifts. You've been wired with passions and talents and abilities. Your life has been given to you on loan. And Paul says it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. God's not asking you to be perfect. He's not asking you to get it all right. He's given us everything we need and calling us simply to be faithful, to put in use what He's given us. So when all else fails, keep your eyes on Jesus. When all else fails this morning and you're overwhelmed with all this, fix your eyes on Jesus. Cry out to Him. Tell Him, I'm willing. I want to be a good steward. I don't know where I'm at in all this, but please help me to find it. And just help me to be continually willing to be on this puzzle searching journey. Your puzzle will continue taking shape. Life choice number 2, steward your uniqueness wisely. Will you do that? Will you make that choice? I want you to take this, and this week I want you to do something with me. I want you to take these notes and reflect on who God has made you. Maybe you just read through and meditate on Ephesians 2:10. Reflect on how God has made you. What you already know about yourself, write it out. Reflect. I'm good at this. I am not good at this. And just put an X through that thing. I'm good at this. I love to do this. I'm passionate about this. My talents seem to be this. I think my spiritual gifts are... Write it out. Write it out. I'm burdened, I'm troubled by this problem in the world. I would love to serve in this kind of opportunity. And it may already exist, it may not exist. Maybe there's some churches or organizations right here in Germantown that we can partner you together with. And we can partner together to solve problems of our area. Take time to sort through the puzzle pieces of your life so that you can steward your uniqueness wisely. This is something I started going through months ago, and I went through a 21-day devotional and was writing all this out, and it has really helped me to clarify me so that ultimately I can serve God and you more effectively. So join me with that this week. Let's pray together.